Hi, I'm Renee Scherzer, and welcome to the LightWork Podcast, a space for conversations about growth, leadership, relationships, faith, financial stewardship, and so much more. One thing I've learned, though, after 30 years in the financial service industry, working with thousands and thousands of individuals, is money is rarely about money. So today's conversation is about that. So having so many conversations and having talked to so many people about money, I've learned it usually leads us to talking about security, identity, freedom, stress, relationships. That can get a little juicy. So today I'm excited to be joined by my friend, Kim Trinh-Wicker. She's a financial advisor and wealth professional at CSP Financial Group here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we're going to talk and dive into lots of fun stuff. We're going to talk about our money story, financial basics that people just need to learn or revisit, how wealth is built, and the biggest financial challenges both individuals and couples face, and how do we overcome them? So whether you're getting started, you're continuing to build your wealth, you feel a little behind, or you are just looking to take that next financial step, this podcast, this recording is for you, and welcome. So let's get started. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first, share a little bit. I'd love for you to share a little bit about why you got started in the financial services industry.
Gosh, that's a great question. And, I really started and I grew up with parents that really worked really hard, but I always felt like we didn't know enough.
Yes.
I mean, we're an immigrant family. They just worked minimum wage jobs.
Yeah.
My parents, my mom is in Indiana. Yeah. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, but growing up, we just never knew enough.
Yeah.
And I always thought that we were like the poor family in a nice neighborhood. We're in the suburbs in Indianapolis. And so their focus for me was just education. Okay, go to school, get a good job. Yeah. But then after that, what happened? Yeah. What's next, right? And I found that no matter how much I worked or how hard I worked, I just never knew enough. And I always felt like behind. Yeah. No matter where I was, right? Yeah. And so compared to my peers, it always felt like I was never enough.
Yes.
So, and then I took on the coaching world. And for the last, 15 years or so, I've taken on coaching advisors and really coaching in life.
Yeah.
And since then, and I really consider myself more of an educator now than a coach, than a financial advisor, because I've taken what I've learned and the mistakes I've made. Yeah. I really can't coach, tell people to do things that I've never done myself, right? Yes. So I've made more mistakes than anybody, but it is using those mistakes and really teaching people to give them confidence and peace of mind ultimately. Yeah.
So that kind of drove you to become a financial advisor. It's just your history and money story of coming from an immigrant family, of not having money even really talked about in the home. My father was an immigrant from New York as well. So I think from my money story and where I started and why I haven't gotten to the industry was very similar. So in my household, money wasn't talked about. And it was something that was very argumentative when it was spoke about. And I just looked and saw what was happening, and I did the exact opposite. So, from my standpoint too, you went the education route, went to coaching and to financial advising. Let me do the exact opposite. And through that, I developed a passion of financially serving and making sure other people didn't follow in the same pattern or pathway that my family did. So, but yeah, I love that you had the path of coaching, because we talked a little bit, even before today, about our money story. And our money story kind of sits within us. It's almost, I always say sometimes, and I mentioned earlier today, was like an inner trauma, is if it stays within us, and a lot of it's subconscious, as we don't even understand that it sits within us. But we develop it at a young age, as you did, and we talked about, and how does that become and evolve as we get to that kind of next level? And where does coaching really come in to help someone maybe retrain or, identify their money story, and how do they maybe change that?
Yeah, That's so good, because you can't coach somebody to do what they're doing now without actually looking and going back a little further to be able to look at what your story is, because it's not just a story for us, it's the truth. Yeah. And unless you can distinguish what's the truth from the story, it's going to be really hard to change that. Yeah. Right? So I'll just tell you a little story, okay? So I'll just tell you my story. When I first started, my first experience with money, and this is something I always ask my clients when I first meet with them, is to share your first childhood memory around money. Yeah. And I'm 6 years old, and I'm in my living room, in our apartment. My dad comes home from work, and he's got this basket he always throws loose change in. And I just learned how to count, money. And so I look at I'm like, oh, Dad, look, we have $1.25. And he goes, you're too young to know anything about money. Yeah. And he might have been right. I'm 6 years old, right? What do I know about money other than I'm just learning to count it? And, but what I decided for me was I'm not enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I'm too dumb. And I'm never going to be enough. And at some point in life, I looked at some point in my life, I'm like, well, when am I going to be enough? Yep. When am I going to be old enough to know anything about money? And I made all the mistakes, right? I was in sales straight out of college. I sold Cutco. And I loved it, right? But I just didn't know how to manage any of the money. I got this 1099 and I'm like, what do I do with it? Yeah. And it really was now looking, in my it wasn't until my 20s really then when I started really to stop and to think and to actually look back, and all of my actions. I was a spender. We'll go into spender and saving and stuff, but that's the story now. Like where I started making mistakes is because I'm never enough, and so no matter how much I accumulated. It was, again, never going to be enough. It was at the identity level. Yeah. And I think we never talk about that. We always talk about where people are today. And so we talked a little bit about then kids, and growing up and how when we get that first paycheck, we also talked about, when I stepped foot on ASU, I was offered a credit card and took it. And that $800 credit card balance I had terrified me. Today, actually, 65% of students graduating actually have credit card debt. So, and that's actual debt, not just a credit card, but debt. So, and that's on top of the $2 trillion, almost, so $1.9 trillion of student loan debt. So, where I've always said is that we need to get into the schools, which obviously the schools are limited about what they can do and teach, and where education is so important. And but if the parents listening, I've got 3 kids, being raised around me, I knew about the money story, healthy relationships with money. So I've always spoken to them about money. And so from my standpoint, when I hear the stories, or I would talk to some of these employees of clients that were younger, I would give, high fives to those who had, parents that really taught them these good habits. But so many parents don't know them to teach them to their children. And so they start and get their first paycheck and make those same mistakes you and I did. So for my children, I know, a couple things about money. We included them in conversations. And I think that was always so important. Instead of saying to a young child, you're too young, it's like, let's talk about what $1.25, if you have a $1.25, what happens if next week I come and put more change in here and you count? It becomes now maybe $2.50. It's like wherever level they're at, I think is probably important. Is there something that you would, I guess, suggest that parents do? Yeah, well, I was actually just thinking about my dad and that interaction. He passed away 2 years ago, and the only thing that he said, on his deathbed, he said, "I love you. You're my love of my life." Right? Yes. And he wanted to protect me. Throughout my whole life. It was just the 2 girls, right? Yeah. And my dad was, they just wanted to work hard and to be able to provide the life for us. Yeah. And so they taught what they knew. Yeah. And if I were in the same seat and in the same situation in his shoes, I think for parents listening out there, just know that sometimes in the same household, you have two different kids, they'll have their own story, and each kid will have their own story. And no matter how much you do, sometimes they're just going to have their own thinking, and they're going to have their own brains, and they're going to make up whatever they make up, right?
My siblings and I look at money completely different.
Well, I think that's really important that when you see that if you can identify those stories and be able to be transparent about it and talk to your kids at a young age, your own story, I think that's where you can identify your own story, talk about it, and be transparent about it. You can then create new habits. Yeah. But until then, everything's just going to be like, well, I've read it, whatever I learned is just going to be the truth, or I do the opposite of my parents.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I did. So for me as a parent of 3, 2 girls and 1 boy, when my son was looking at colleges, engaging him in the conversation, because I said, this is how much we have saved. This is how much college cost. This is what you're going to get from an academic scholarship. And he had wanted to go out of state. So I had him do spreadsheets and tell me what was going to be the cost of him attending those colleges, what was even adding travel costs. I had him do this whole workup, and he came back to me. I had him go through the exercise, and then I'd coach him along the way. And he comes back and he's like, it doesn't make financial sense. And I'm like, perfect. So now you're going to go through a college experience. You're going to come out debt free, and you're going to have a chunk of change that help on you, those first decisions you make. So I think it's really important. And I think there's different things that we can do, but just including the younger generation in those conversations is great. My father was a immigrant, and he, even till when he passed 3 years ago, he still didn't know how to manage money. So I know I wanted to make sure, my kids and stuff too, and my husband and I learned how to talk about it and make those right decisions. So we start working into, people are getting into, their working years. There is something that I love that you talk about is the different levels of someone's financial journey, from where they start to where they're building that legacy. Yeah. And if you can talk through those stages.
Sure. So, the stages of spending the stages of money, really, our relationship to it. You start as a spender. Yeah. Then there's a saver. And there's a wealth creator, and then a legacy builder. And usually, the spender, where many of us, myself included, I would identify with myself for a big part of my life, right? Yeah. And I really learned that because mostly you're surviving on your own. And I mean, my dad told me at a young age, he goes, as soon as when I went to college, he goes, you're going to have to figure it out. We don't know enough. Yeah. And so it was like,
that's great that he said that.
Yeah. And he was just like, well, I mean, I was translating documents for him when I was like 12, from Vietnamese to English. And so I was already kind of independent. So I knew that I had to figure this out on my own. Yeah. And in hindsight, I just made all the mistakes. But as somebody who's young, learning to navigate the world financially, you're just a spender. I mean, it's hard, especially never mind circumstances, right? You're learning the habits. And to go from a spender to a saver, you got to catch yourself of where, how do I actually transform myself from a spender to a saver? And most spenders will live paycheck to paycheck, and they will borrow credit, right? You'll use credit cards, and then, before you know it, you have this debt, right? And then whereas when you can stop and pause and then almost reduce your lifestyle, because sometimes you have that convenience creep. Yeah. And it's hardest to go from a spender to a saver because our environment calls for spending. I mean, look at all the ads on social media. Oh, yeah. As soon as our phones are listening. I mean, as soon as we talk about anything, you're going to get that ad pop up. I mean, literally.
I just ordered a whole set of hair products this morning that I saw that popped up on my screen. Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah, I get it.
The skincare. It's like the Korean skincare stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have like 10 ads a day on that on my Instagram.
But the spending thing, where I think most people are at there and where they can move into that saving is where that B word comes up, budgeting, and people not of knowing where is my money going.
Sexy word, budgets.
Yeah, I used to say your monthly financial allocation. So if they're moving from a spender to then saving, now that's becoming ownership of those dollars. That's where I talk of even the stewardship of somebody's dollars. So moving into saving, where they're learning how to spend, but also accumulating wealth.
Well, I think that's where it comes back to the identity level, right? So as soon as you label yourself as like, this is who I am, your actions are going to be consistent with that.
Yep.
So, okay, so maybe you do relate to yourself as a spender. Like, what are some of the things that you do? Like, maybe it's I mentioned the convenience creep, right? So maybe I don't need to go to Starbucks every day.
Yep.
Maybe I could make coffee at home. I mean, we spend so much more out of convenience, and mostly because it's trying to, I relate to myself a certain way, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to compensate for it,
Yeah.
And but even apps now, like there's an app for everything, right? There's in DoorDash. Oh my gosh, convenience, especially since COVID, right?
Yeah.
DoorDash is blown up. It's like, and you spend more. Did you know that restaurants charge more on DoorDash for the convenience fee to cover themselves?
I did not know that. I don't use DoorDash.
There's this.
I won't spend that money.
I know
on it, but those types of things though really do creep up on people. And I think I would sit down with employees of clients, and they would say, "I don't have 3% to put in my 401k plan." And I said, well, let's go through and look at where your money's going. And then we could see those little extra here. And like, this is where you're going to find that 3%. It's those people think they minimize the impact of small decisions. And it's those small decisions. I always say, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So it's like, well, it's like tracking your food, stepping on a scale. It's like, someone wanting to get in shape. It's like, well, what are you eating? What's going in your mouth? And so let's go through and identify where is that leakage. So for me and my food diet, it's sweet. So I know I'm like, okay, you're eating too much sugar. But where people, it's a really a big light. It is that convenience creep. But the empowerment that comes, and I've seen the light shine bright when they are all of a sudden in that saving path. And so let's say they begin saving. What's the next step that they get to?
Well, once you start saving, there's different. Should we go through the financial decision order?
Yeah, we'll touch on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because when I look through, when I meet with a client, we gather everything up first. Let me actually just pivot real quick, because if we go through the beginning of what we're dealing with, most clients, when they look at the budget, right, the big B word. First of all, I think sometimes it's the hardest thing to do is to open up your statements and to actually see where you spent the money and where did it all go, right? And so sometimes when I first meet with the client, I'll have them share with me 3 months of expenses, all of their credit cards, all their checking accounts.
Yeah.
And I run it through a software and I look through okay, well, what percentage is going where, right? And sometimes we have apps now that do that too. But I think the hardest problem is through overcoming the procrastination, overcoming the story about it, it's so hard to do. But I think once you do it, and that's why it's nice to have a coach who can do it for you. And so you eliminate that emotional speed bump, you can say. And so that's why I'll do it with them. And then I'll meet with them and go through, what's surprising?
And there's also probably shame in that too. I've had that too. 100%. I've talked with people, getting over the shame. This is a no judgment zone. It's like someone coming over to my house for karaoke. It's like, there is no judgment. Everyone's going to come and sing, and no one's going to make fun of everyone. Yeah. I've never had the sign on the door. Yes. So I think that is, and that's why I try to tell people too, is when I would meet with people, I would say, this is what my bio won't tell you. These are mistakes I've made. It doesn't, people always see that end result of someone who is maybe in a financial stable position, and then they think, oh, but you were always there. It's like, oh no, I learned through all of this. And part of it is that let's just put it all out there. And this is what I did. This is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I always say you can tell a lot about somebody by how they spend their money.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's the environment, again, the environment just calls for us to spend, right? And so, and one thing that I've found from experience is without some sort of long-term vision or purpose for your money, that's where then the money will then, no matter how much you have, it can be enough. We work to earn and earn and earn, and only to get more and then only to spend, right? And lose it all. I mean, for some of us. And I think the transformation it takes from a spender to a saver is when they actually are connected to, okay, what do I want for myself 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah. You could say that in life. I say it, your North Star.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
Yeah. And without a purpose, grow your money and being, who are you for that money, right? You're a steward, and Well, I like to think of me as a steward, like this money isn't really mine. It's meant for me to take care of, like a child, like if, and Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I don't know, the first books I was exposed to when I was, decades ago. So weird to say that now because I'm not that old. And also I'm 41, which is kind of old, when I was like 18, I think, side note. But Robert Kiyosaki in that book references each dollar as an employee. And so you put it to work. Yeah. So is it harder? So is it harder to, you work every day and you trade time for money. So is it better to have that money, to just work for that money off your own sweat and labor? Or what about your labor and then making that money earn?
Yep. And then that first dollar is the most powerful dollar that you're going to invest.
There's a reason why compound interest, they say, is the eighth wonder of the world.
It is. It's magical. I always say it's like magic. And I think, so in doing that, as we're going in through the savings part and getting that plan in place, what's that next stage that someone is in within their financial journey?
Sure. So, once you started saving, right, you have the 401k at work. So if somebody puts,
if not an IRA,
right, and but I always say to match their 401k at work, it's because it's free money. It's your company is offering that, so take that, match it at the very least, right? Yep. And you also don't see it, so it's dealing with the human behavior, right? If you don't see it, you're not going to spend it.
Yep.
So there's that. And then, of course, maximize your Roth IRA. So save that. And then, of course, there's a next level of when we get into those specific accounts, investing and how to really invest it and have a diversified portfolio.
Yeah. And to take a step back on that too. So for people who are listening who aren't familiar with the terminology of, just contributing to a 401k plan versus a Roth is, the traditional path is you put the money in before state and federal taxes. It grows tax deferred. Remember that word, deferred. Then when you get to retirement, you take that money and pay the taxes on those dollars. Whereas a Roth, you pay your taxes today, then they grow tax-free. Free is a different word there. And then when you get to retirement, you take the money out and you don't pay the taxes on the dollars you put in because you've already paid taxes on the dollars or the growth of those dollars. It's magic. And so I think from a Roth standpoint, even in my 50s, I was maxing out before I took my exit from my last company. I did 100% Roth. And people would say, you're in your 50s. Like, why are you doing Roth? And it's like, well, because I feel taxes will be up. And when I get to retirement, I want to have that powerful dollar that's not going to be taxable to me. So for that, I think people need to, that's a very underutilized benefit in a lot of retirement plans.
Well, you make a really good point about how our taxes are going to be later on. Is it going to go up or is it going to go down? And historically, if you look at the last, 50 years, at one time, we were paying 90% in taxes.
Yep.
So on average in history, we're technically kind of on the low end.
Well,
right. I know
there's a fantastic book called What to Expect When No One is Expecting. Now, this book is probably about 15 years old now, but when you look at the aging population and not as many taxpayers, where Social Security is going to come, it's like a pig going through a python. We've got to really take ownership of our finances today because of where potentially we can be with taxes in the future. So, but please continue. Sorry, I get a little passionate about that.
I know, and there's so many different directions we can go with it because, I'll go back to the financial decision order.
Yeah.
So now if you do have debt, you definitely want to start. You want to start an emergency account, right? And I would say that start with that first. And an emergency account has 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses. But in order to know how much you need to have an emergency, you need to know how much you're spending each month, right? Yeah. And that's one thing. But so you save, but if you don't have the discipline or the practice and the habits now to get to 3 months, maybe you just do a 1 month, or maybe do 1 week. Like, how much is it going to, let me just put it aside. And if you're like, I know I'm going to spend it, it turns into, money that you use for going out and extra things, like freeze it if you have to, right? Yeah. Bury it. I know people who put it into boxes and then hide it in their, bury it in their yard, right? But whatever it is, get yourself there because you'll start to relate yourself like, I know I have some money. It's going to be okay. Yeah. So if you're driving and you have, your tires pop, then at least it's going to not derail you completely, right? Yeah. So start with a little savings emergency.
Yeah.
Put it aside. Take care of the high interest credit card debt. Yeah. And then you can start to add on to your emergency. And then, of course, your 401k, whether it's Roth. And some plans now have a Roth option, right? And then if your company doesn't do a match, of course, start your own Roth IRA, individual retirement account, right? And then of course your oh my gosh, this is my favorite piece though. Okay. This is like the tax efficient trifecta is the health savings account, the HSA. So if your company is offering you a high deductible health savings plan or health plan, HDHP, then you can have an HSA.
And a lot of times they contribute to that, and you can invest those dollars.
Of course,
mine's in the S&P 500.
Yes.
Yeah, so
right. But yeah, you can invest your money, but then it's also you can also reimburse yourself for any health expenses, even if it's 20 years from now. So pay out of pocket for some health things now, if you can. And then let that money grow and invest that. And then you reimburse yourself for anything you have health related in the future. 20 years from now. I mean,
well, and that's what some of the strategy that we would talk to, and I talk to people too, and I personally do, is in that HSA account that now I can no longer contribute to, but I have it sitting there investing in a S&P 500. And then I've got a folder with receipts. So when let it grow for as many years, I'm going to collect the receipts. And then when I get to retirement, it's non-taxable dollars. So
I think that's so underutilized.
And those are like little tips and stuff too for where people are. But so we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit in decisions and other things, but we talked about the emotions, but let's talk about couples. Cause, I always say to my kids, don't play hero ball, when they're playing basketball, don't be a player that plays hero ball. If you are someone who has a significant other and finances in your home requires there's two people, two maybe income earners or a husband, wife, or just significant others that are living together, there is a lot of stress that can cause a relationship. And there's about 30% of divorces are attributed to financial, disagreements, whatever that may be. That's saying that nicely. So for spouses, I know you sit down with people, and I've shared on an earlier podcast, I was married before. I've been with my husband now 22 years. My first husband, he was fantastic in other things, but he was horrible with money. And he would avoid talking money with me at all costs. And that was one of the biggest stressors we had. It lost us sleep, and it was one of the leading causes of what made us not be successful as a couple. And so I know communication is a huge, huge thing. So my husband of 22 years, he learned very early on to talk about things. Is there things that you see in couples or you would suggest when you're sitting down with them and they're putting their 3 months of spending out, of how that works or how couples can work better together? Sure.
The first thing I would say is, are you aligned in your vision for money?
Yep.
And then also are you aligned and in communication with how your budget is as a household, right? And of course, it always comes back to the idea of we're in this together. And I found from my own experience, I've been in a relationship and I was engaged in my 20s, and our relationship with money was so different then versus now. In hindsight, where I really went awry, and I'll take 100% responsibility for it, is like we were competing. It was like, who's going to make more? And our job was to...
That's not always a bad thing.
Right.
As long as what you're doing with it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that at some point, it's like I started making more than him. And, and of course, we're aligned in that, and we have separate bank accounts. And I still align on, at least that's one thing that worked. I have separate, we have separate accounts now. And, and I think it's also healthy to have a joint account for your common monthly expenses.
Yeah.
But
full disclosure, I think, is just the important part when you have separate accounts.
Yeah. And then, of course, mostly, like for me, I'm an independent and I don't want to have to justify everything I buy to my husband.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll buy things and he's like, I don't know why you spend so much money on food. I'm like, but I love it.
Yeah. I would laugh at my husband if he asked me what I spent money on. Because he knows I'm a good steward with the dollars. But you have to get to that point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, and then I think that's where the trust will start to build, is when you can be transparent. And for my, now my husband's like, okay, I can make money. You just keep it. I'm like, okay, I'll take that job on. But I think our job has to synergize, and you have, there's alignment, and each person has a role.
Yeah.
I've seen couples who one person makes all the money, they pay all the bills, and then the other person's completely blinded by where it's going.
Well, that's that solo manager trap that people get into. And I've seen it where we've lost an individual, sadly, and one of the spouses, and this is where we can talk about an oversight, where the individual does no idea who to call, where the money's at, what bills are going out. So even if a couple's listening is in that situation, the first thing I encourage them to do is have a money meeting and schedule it like an appointment and make sure there's no judgment. Do it at a time where people are at their best. So maybe not right before bed, or if someone's a grumpy morning person, not in the morning, maybe it's a lunch appointment. Let's sit down and let's look at all of our finances and let's talk through it. Where are we at today? So if someone is in that solo manager role, sit down with their spouse, let them know, where their protected passwords are, who to talk to, because I think that is so important. And I know what I learned with my husband, and he's fantastic, and he's, it's so nice because he paid me a compliment even not very long ago, and he said, we'd be doing well, but not as where we really are financially as a family if it wasn't for you kind of steering the ship. And I sat down with him and I said, in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to talk about it. We're going to have to be, you can't be scared to talk about money with me. And we learned we're not perfect at it, but one of the things was, as I asked him, when I say, this is a great thing for couples and to ask people yourself, is ask your spouse to say, when I say money, what does it mean to you? And just stop and listen. And I asked that of my husband, and I was, resentful. He was getting shirts by someone was coming, a tailor, and they were like $300, $400. And I was like, it was giving me hives. And then I learned what his money story was when he's going to buy one shirt versus buying, 8 junk shirts, that he didn't even want. So, and we learned how to navigate money together. And it started with me asking the question, when I say money, what does it mean to you? Mm-hmm. So I think that's important. But I love when you sit down and you're like, shining a light on everything. It has to be scary at sometimes.
Yeah, well, and especially if you grew up not talking about money. I mean, the the no talk rule is so prevalent in our childhood, right? And if you lived in a family who just never talked about it, and you're building that habit with your spouse, I think the first thing is being able to create kind of a safe environment to be able to talk, no shame.
Yep.
And if you start to notice where that shame, if you relate to yourself like, okay, look, this is I'm a good person if I do this, I'm a bad person if I don't, like, then you start to project it on the other person too. And I think it takes maturity, and I think it takes a lot of courage really to acknowledge, maybe I don't know all the things, and let's just talk through it. And then hiring a coach, I think, makes a huge difference, because when you're in it, a fish doesn't know it's swimming in water. Yeah. But there's a reason why the best performers in the world have like 1 million coaches.
Yes.
Right? Like Michael Phelps doesn't see each stroke he's taking, his coach does.
Yeah, I think that coaching is so important. That's why I love your history on coaching. And so there was another stat that I thought was fantastic, fantastically disturbing, was 40% of couples have financial, what is the word? It's financial infidelity. Financial infidelity. I mean, 40% of people are hiding things from their spouse. I remembered an old friend who, was hiding $30,000 of credit card debt from her husband. And it was earlier in their time. Kids were young at the time. And she was terrified. And it caused a ripple effect of other things. And so that to me is a big thing. I know even through, working with so many employees and so many leaders, is the things that when I've talked to them, like, have you talked to your spouse about this? Or, if you're taking this significant loan, let's talk about the long-term impacts, and is this a family decision? Things like that. So I think that is really important. But the tackling debt as a team is a fun thing. I think, these are our goals. Let's do it together. Let's make sure we don't, we pay off the cars, we pay off any credit card debt. Because then there's also a sense of accomplishment together too. I'm sure you see that as a coach.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, we're in this together, and doing it together, I think, is the key, right? Yeah. So it's talk to your coach or talk to your spouse, certainly. And if I think I can't stress it enough, how how much our story can and really get in the way from us being able to not just be honest with ourselves, but be honest with our significant other.
Yeah.
And then be able to talk about it. And my husband and I kind of like revisit our vision all the time. We actually have, as far as building our future together, we took our engagement pictures actually up in Brown Ranch. And so we hung it in our house in Mesa, and this was a few years ago.
Yeah.
And, here we are, we just moved up to Troon and we looked at the pictures, it's like, oh my gosh, we just literally took pictures here, right? But it was like a vision we created and we painted together. We literally have a reminder of ourselves, the future we're creating. And that was kind of, it wasn't about where we were living, but it was about the kind of lifestyle we wanted to have for our kids and our family. And
I love that.
Yeah, it wasn't even about it wasn't any about that. It was about our family. So for us, when we work, it's for the freedom and choice and to be able to spend time with our family.
Oh, yeah.
But we're really so clear on that. And that's why we're so busy working all the time. I think that is the most important thing is alignment.
100%. And doing it together. I mean, my husband and I are super competitive people. So we would, those things, even those, the Oura rings and the steps and all that. I mean, it's really bad. But one thing we did with when we started learning money, and we were at the stage where we were still paying off credit cards earlier in our relationship, and or paying off our car, I think it was. We were like, he's checking out at Dick's, and he's like, I didn't check out. I left my shoes there because I know you have a coupon. And I had him, I started, it became like a game, and it was like, I was so like excited. And it was like, it does when we got debt free and we reached goals quicker than we expected, it was because we were aligned together. And I think that is huge. And it definitely makes for an easier relationship. And also bringing in the kids into the discussion. We would say to the kids, you know what, we're running around on sports. We have all these other expenses. We want to take this trip. So we're going to eat home more because it's going to cost our family dinner, $15 that rather than going out and being $80, which now that you talk about where we are today, it's much bigger. So we are at a time, inflation has been creeping up, and if there was not before COVID, if there was not money challenges in someone's life or a couple's life, family's life before they were brewing below the surface, boy, did they come to right at the surface, right after COVID. Inflation, we say, it's leveled, or we said it's not growing as fast, but it's not like we had any retraction because, in those earlier years, we were looking at, prices going up, especially at the grocery store. We see gas prices. So for somebody feeling financially insecure right now and maybe saying, okay, this sounds great. I love that you talk about the Roth and everything else. I've heard about this, or about, paying down debt. I understand this. But what would you say to someone who just wants to get started and just says, you know what, I've made mistakes, but I'm not going to be younger than I am today. What should I do next?
Sometimes we think, one day I'll just make it big. One day I'll just make a lot of money.
Yeah, I have a family member that way. Yeah.
I'll just be rich overnight. And someday,
my first husband was that way.
$1 million is going to drop into my lap one day, right?
I'll spend $2,000 today because I'm going to make $5,000 tomorrow. Yeah.
Right? Exactly, right? I would say that just to get started today, meaning you just save a little bit. If you can't do a 1,000 a month, maybe do 100 a month, right? Like do what you can and put it aside. And consistency is the key. And if you're a worker outer, if you work out, you notice the gains really happen. They don't happen overnight. They happen a little bit at a time.
I just started tracking my food recently, and yes, I've made aware of the little things. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they add up and you don't even know it.
I know.
mean, that's the thing. It's like it sneaks up on you, right? So okay, look, time. I'll just give you the formula for wealth. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
It's money, plus rate of return, plus time, minus taxes and fees.
Yep,
that's your wealth, right? So then, okay, you work on the money. That's an income. That's an income thing. But time is something you really can't control. That is our one non-renewable resource.
Yeah, so, I wish I could find more.
I know. I wish I was like 19 again. I'm like, gosh, if I'd known what I know now, I mean, the things we tell ourselves, right? But time is such a precious resource. So, and it's uninterrupted compound interest. I mean, that's the uninterrupted is the piece. So for a 19-year-old to get started, putting $100 a month aside versus a 40-year-old like me putting $100 aside, I have to put a lot more in order to get to the same amount and because I have shorter time period, but also the amount of growth that, on average. Now, historically, the market has grown 10% year over year since 1926. It's 100 years of data.
Yeah.
And if you're conservatively planning for the future, maybe plan 7%, right? So, because we don't know where the future is going to go. So, a 19-year-old at night, growing at 7%. I mean, you put it $100 in, it'll be $400,000 by the time you. And very quickly.
Well, I think the math is if you put $1,000 in the market at 1926, you would have had $1 million. Like something like $1.5 million.
Oh, yeah, beyond that, yeah,
something like that.
Or
no, I think it's 15 million. It's something exorbitant. So,
yes,
but I think that is what is so important. So, I am very transparent. I always share with people, about when they say this is where I'm coming from. I'm never going to get out of this. I'm like, okay, so I was a single mom, went through a divorce. I inherited about 7 credit card debt from my divorce, and I was never a spender, but my former husband had made decisions in business, and community property rules and things didn't work in my favor, and he didn't intentionally do it, but I had a list. I still have it in my office today of all 7, and every time I paid off one, I had victory written across it. And I had written a bunch of goals, and I've shared on an earlier podcast, I had written 100 goals and income goals, savings goals. And not only did that experience teach me and give me that strength and empower, but all those little, and it wasn't big things. I was like an extra $10 or $20. I just slowly chipped away, paid all of them off, and I have blown away any financial goal I ever had. And it's those lessons sometimes during those tough times that we get through that makes us so much stronger. And I love those early dollars I had saved, because it is, the time value is so important. And so, there is something, I know we talk about education. I'd love for you to share about, you have, at your organization, you offer an actually 8-week program where people can learn basics, because we just really scratched the surface today.
That's right. So, I believe that education is the access to peace of mind. Financial confidence really comes from not just knowing yourself, but also knowing the things to do, right? So our class it's called the Financial Foundations. It's an 8-week course, 2 hours a week, and we offer that East Coast time and West Coast time. That covers everything from estate planning, Social Security planning, taxes, basic cash flow, insurance planning, investing, and over 8 weeks, it's just the basics. But people can do it as many times as they want. I've had clients who've done it 3 times, because each time you do it, you just learn a little more, or you pick up something that you didn't pick up before. Because it is like drinking water through a hose, through a fire hose. It's a lot, and because we're making up for all this. Years and years, none of us were really educated.
Nope.
Unless you purposely looked for it, right? So it is a free class we offer, but it's a great standard, or a great foundation. I always like to think the first year working with a client, I'm uncoaching them. Yeah. Or they're unlearning things, because they picked up all these things in their life, and
we can change our money story. And financial literacy is not the same as money story. They're very different things. So you're bringing this up, and you're helping adjust this. It's kind of a beautiful evolution. So how and one thing to touch on, because I don't want to forget this, as I feel like I'm very maternal where it comes with money and finances and life insurance. You touched on estate planning. If something unforeseeable happens to you who's listening, and someone would be at a financial disadvantage due to you not being here, make sure you get life insurance. And also, if you have kids, or if you have amassed any type of assets, make sure you get some estate planning too. And we'll talk about that at a later time. So how does somebody get in touch with you?
Sure. They can follow me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Okay. My Instagram handle is at Profit and Purpose Kim.
Let me say that. Can you repeat that?
Yes. My Instagram handle is at Profit and Purpose Kim.
Okay. All right. Well, so now I like to end every conversation about the same way, is that looking ahead at the who you are 10 years from now. So you said your age earlier, so I could repeat it. So you're 51 years old. Think about who that person is at 51, of, just what she looks like, how she carries herself, how she would talk to you. And just think, if she were sitting here today, what would she tell you? And what advice would she give you?
Well, I imagine myself sitting in front of a fire with with our family. Like, Joe's got 3 kids and, grandkids. And I imagine them like us actually annual trips together and like really just spending time together.
But what advice would she give you?
Oh, yes. Good question. Thank you. Is go slow to go fast.
Yep. The slingshot approach.
Yeah. It's one thing at a time, and eat the elephant one bite at a time. Right.
Yeah.
It's consistency and being patient with yourself.
Yeah. I love that. I think I always say use the slingshot approach. Sometimes take a step back to launch forward. So, well, thank you so much, Kim. This has been so fun. I love our conversations. And, when we look through this, wealth isn't what accumulate, but it's also who we become, and how we steward our dollars and, how we protect people that we love and just ultimately, the life that we're building around it. So love the conversation about money. And we want to leave you with a question is, what's your money story? And just would love for everyone to sit on it. Just go out there, spread your light. And thank you for joining us. So how would someone get in touch with you? And learn about, first of all, maybe working with you as a coach or advisor, or also learn about the that 8-week program.
Sure. For information on the Financial Foundations course, they can go to our website, cspfinancialgroup.com. And they can sign up directly on the website. They can follow me on Instagram. Also, my handle is @ProfitAndPurposeKim.
I should also add to this, for those who are listening, I'd love for a review and for you to follow me on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcast.